There are files that should never be reopened. This one is one of them. It is December 1900, off the coast of Scotland. An archipelago battered by the winds, isolated in the middle of the North Atlantic, the Flannan Isles. On one of them, Eilean Mòr, stands a solitary white lighthouse perched on the cliffside. A massive structure, built to withstand the most violent storms. Inside, 3 men, Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur. All seasoned seamen, chosen to endure the harshness of this inhospitable place. Their mission is simple: to make sure the lighthouse's light stays on, guiding ships away from the deadly rocks. The shifts last several weeks, with no contact with the mainland. No radio, only the silence, the sea, and the light. In this setting of absolute isolation, the days pass by. Storms, freezing rain, howling winds. A single mistake could cost them their lives. But the men hold on. Until that fateful December, when the light goes out and no one ever answers again. On the 15th of December, 1900, as a storm ripped through the North Atlantic, the steamer Archtor approached the Scottish coast. The ship's captain cast a glance toward the island of Eilean Mòr. Usually, the Flannan lighthouse cast its white beam into the night. But that night, nothing. Total darkness. The lighthouse was supposed to operate without interruption. Not a single moment of blackout. Yet no one seemed to be ensuring its proper functioning. The crew noted the anomaly. But amidst the fury of the sea, it was impossible to land. For several days, the island remained silent. No signal, no message, no sign of life. It wasn't until the 26th of December, 11 days later, that the supply ship Hesperus finally managed to approach the island. On board were Captain James Harvey and Joseph Moore, a fourth keeper who was to relieve one of the 3 men. But from the moment they arrived, something felt off. No flag was raised on the mast. None of the keepers came down the steps to greet the ship, as was customary. The landing dock was empty. The silence, absolute. Joseph Moore climbed alone up the steep path leading to the lighthouse, swept by the wind. His heart pounded harder with every step. Something wasn't right. When he reached the lighthouse door, it was locked from the inside. He knocked, called out. Nothing. He stepped inside, and what he discovered would haunt him for the rest of his life. Joseph Moore slowly stepped over the threshold of the lighthouse. Inside, an eerie dimness hung in the air. Only the pale gray daylight filtered through the narrow windows. He called out for his colleagues, his voice loud, but no reply came. In the kitchen, the table was set. 3 chairs, 3 plates. The bread had been sliced. A piece of meat still lay on the table, as if the meal had been suddenly interrupted. A stool was lying overturned on the floor. The wall clock had stopped. In the bedroom, the beds were unmade, but empty. No signs of struggle. No blood, no sound. On the coat rack, 2 oilskins were missing, but the third one was still there. That detail disturbed Joseph. Why would one of the men go out into the storm without a coat? He then descended to the engine room. Everything was in order. The lighthouse systems were functioning, but the light was off. The lantern at the top no longer burned. Mòr climbed back up, his heart heavy. He knew he was alone, truly alone. He ran out of the lighthouse, his breath short. On the path back, he turned around one last time. The lighthouse stood still, silent, as if it were keeping a secret. After the discovery of the empty lighthouse, Captain James Harvey and his team combed the island carefully. No bodies, no clear evidence. Yet, a lower area near the cliffs drew their attention. Ropes twisted around themselves, broken crates, torn down railings. It seemed a violent storm had struck. The head keeper, James Ducat, and assistant Thomas Marshall might have gone down to secure the equipment. Donald MacArthur, left behind, could have followed when he saw they weren't returning. All three may have been swept away by a giant wave. That's the version accepted in the official report, written a few days later. But this scenario raises questions. Why does the logbook stop 3 days before their disappearance? Why was the clock stopped, the fire out, and why does the last entry mention a monstrous storm when no such weather was recorded by nearby meteorological stations? The entry from the 12th of December says that the winds howled from the west, that the keepers prayed, that MacArthur was inexplicably in tears. But Donald MacArthur was known for his tough character. A former soldier, a brawler, fearless. Why would he have been in tears over an ordinary storm? These details were written down, but none of the entries were signed. No one knows which of the keepers wrote them. Chief Officer Muirhead, however, stood by his conclusion. The men died, fulfilling their duty. But in the nearby villages, rumors spread, and some begin to believe that something else happened. Very quickly, the official report no longer sufficed to calm people's minds. In the taverns of nearby villages, in sailors' letters, another version began to circulate. Some claimed to have seen, off the coast of the Flannan Isles, a massive dark silhouette rising from the waves just days before the disappearance. A sea creature? A spirit from the deep? Others spoke of an unknown ship spotted near the rocks, which vanished at dawn, speeding away. An abduction? An execution? A persistent rumor spoke of a violent quarrel between the three men. What if one had killed the other two before throwing himself into the sea? But there was no blood, no bodies, no sign of violence. And then there's that strange coincidence. Back in the 1892nd, a former lighthouse keeper, dismissed for unstable behavior, had once claimed that the Flannan Isles were cursed. He said he'd heard voices in the night, cries, shouts, whispers in the wind. He had written in his journal, "Something watches here, something unseen." This passage, discovered years later, still chills those who dare set foot on the island. And finally, some have suggested a more esoteric theory, a tear in time, a call from the ocean, or A disappearance orchestrated by the keepers themselves, part of a strange pact to vanish from the world. Of course, none of these theories have ever been proven, but none have ever been entirely ruled out either. That was just one truth among many. Which one do you want Grave Whisper to uncover next?